Hi, I am Anna Imagination with a Healing Garden. I am talking today on perspective thinking, and I am delving deep into combination theory, where I basically am setting up a DIY, do it yourself DIY, a DIY finding your own combination so that you don't have to wait to get into the course to just do this. This is basic common sense. It's deductive reasoning. It's following your intuition. So really there is, and you have your history, so there really is no reason why you can't do this yourself. I do not believe that diagnosis is something that should even exist in psychology, because psychology is opinion, not scientific metric. Diagnosis is something that only belongs in scientific metric, because there is no scientific metric. Your intuition, your identity, your perspective is the best determining factor to determine what's wrong with you. And it's perspective abuse when a professional comes along and tells you what your diagnosis is according to their metrics, when they don't even have the ability to measure your metric, which is why so much which is why so much diagnosis is incorrect and is happening right now in the psychology field. So that is my 1 minute lecture about why I am so against diagnosis even existing in psychology. So what I have here is for perspective thinking, where you can go in, you can read. This is for combination theory, where you go in, you read the 8 perspectives intuitively. You go with the one that feels right for you, the one that you desire to be. That's your first one. That's your first combination of your 3 numbers. The first number is your ethics, your ethical perspective. Only you can figure that out. And it's very simple. You just read those eight perspectives. Which one resonates with you? That's your truth. If you cannot figure out which one resonates with you, if you don't know, that's because your autonomy, identity, and authority have been so abused with perspective abuse that you can't even tap into that. Triadic healing will help you with that. We're going to recover that, and then you'll be able to go in and identify which one of those is yours. So if you're lost and you look and you're like, I don't know which one I am, it's okay. That's how severe your perspective abuse was, and we will help you out in triadic healing. Now, the second number is a little bit tricky because there's 2 major elements. The first element is, which perspective were you in when you were first abused? That is the priority. That is the overall determining factor. At what perspective were you first significantly abused? Now, the second factor is, what was the subconscious mind or the ethical perspective? What was the subconscious mind's perspective or the ethical perspective of your abuser when you were first abused? And these usually line up. These, I almost want to use the words, it's identical in every case. And the reason why I say that is because when a child is born and they're in perspective 1, there's no abuse. If anything, everyone loves a baby. So they're like, well, a lot of people love babies. So it's like, oh, look at the baby. The baby's always happy and smiling. And the baby is not pressured to be anything other than what the baby is. This is caregiver stage. This is level 1. This is why when I talk about perspective abuse, I never mention level 1s. It's because they're infants. Infants don't exactly go around putting their perspective on other people. They can't. So it's perspective 2, perspective 3, perspective 4 that does the abusing. The reason why is because when you get to perspective 2, the authority shifts from the caregiver onto the community leader. That could be your preacher, that could be your priest, that could be your father, that could be your mother, that could be the leader of a gang, that could be the head leader of your Wiccan coven. Seriously, it could be the family member, the father of the family, like the godfather. The godfather in that case, that's level 2 thinking, that's level 2 perspective. And that is very much, the godfather is the one who has a say, and all authority goes to him. Oh my God, the Godfather movies are 100% perspective 2 thinking. That is it. That's it. Mafia thinking is 100% level 2 perspective thinking. It could also be the church. Very much, it's very saturated by church and God and the religious leader and that hierarchy. It's when hierarchy is first really strongly introduced, and all identity, authority, and autonomy are given over to the community leader, who makes all the decisions for every person in that group. So if you are living in a level two community and everyone's happy and everything's great, and then you shift to level three where you start to reflect on the individual and the self, and you want to break away from the community, enter perspective abuse. I got to witness this with my own family where my brother entered the stage of independence where he wanted to take the authority, the identity, and the autonomy back to himself, away from the community, away from God, put it on himself, which is normal and healthy. And it was the time in which he wanted to define his own identity and autonomy. And to do that, you have to be alone to pull this off. 3-year-olds do this a lot. Well, he did it. He was 8 or 10 at the time. And he told my mother, I don't believe in God. And my mother sat him down, threw the Bible at him, and said, you read this until you believe. And he had to sit there on the floor for hours and read the Bible until he believed it. That is perspective abuse. That is my mother's level two perspective abusing a level three. And what ended up happening is it caused a perspective abuse in my brother. So he branched off and became highly violent, highly abusive, highly suppressed, highly aggressive. And he's stuck there. And he is still stuck there because his subconscious mind is still wired to that abuse and that level of suppression. There you go. That's perspective abuse. And we see that a lot. So in this case, it was my mother who was level two, and he moved to level three, and she said, no, you're not allowed there. So his subconscious mind received one message. It is not safe to grow. It is not safe to develop beyond level two. So my brother, now to get his subconscious mind from there to there, to healthy, he has to advance his subconscious mind from A to B. But his actual perspective is a level 5. His ethical perspective is a level 5. But that abuse occurred, so it kept him at level 2. So there's a lot of that. That's one example. So it's usually you get abused when you go on or leave the perspective that's desired by whichever situation you're in. So if your parents are both very passionate fours, that looks like high conformist, high strict. You must obey the law. You must obey the rule. You must respect authority. You must have your place and get your day job. And that's very much the American dream concept. That's level 4. So if both of your parents are level 4, they're going to love you right up until level 4. They're going to have a lot of patience with you right up until you get to level 4. And anytime you embrace level 2 or level 3, they're either going to lovingly dismiss it patiently. Oh yeah, he's growing up, level 2, level 3. I remember when I was there. And then when they get to level 4, it's very good. You're an outstanding citizen. But if that person wants to go to level 5, that's when the parents come down and, oh, you can't do that. Now you're not thinking about the community. You're thinking about yourself. Now you're selfish. And that's where the word selfish comes from, is when a perspective sees somebody enter in the next perspective and they start to shift the authority from whoever has the authority onto themselves. And when that happens, it's authority, identity, and autonomy. When those three things start to shift, the different perspectives, 1 through 6, will begin abusing the other perspectives. At 7, this stops. There is no perspective abuse at level 7. That's one of the characteristics of level 7, is you start to see the big picture of, oh, we all are needed. We're all just different. We all must respect each other's perspectives. So level 7 is adjusting from the individual perspective to the perspective as a whole and respecting all the perspectives. So that's what's waiting for you at level 7. But level 6 is levels 1 through 6 are very much, my perspective is better than your perspective. And now you're getting into perspective abuse. So to figure out your second digit, your second number in your combination, the question you need to ask is, which perspective were you in? How old were you? And this is the beautiful things. If you are at optimum mental health, if you had optimum mental health, when you were 1, you were at perspective 1. When you were at 2, you were at perspective 2. When you were at 3, terrible 2s. When you are 3, you're at perspective 3. When you are 4, you are at perspective 4. That's when you're 4 and you're really making sure that you follow the schedule and you follow the clock and everyone does what they're supposed to do in the laws and the rules. Perspective 5, is 5 years old when you're thinking about what do I want to be when you grow up? And that's when you contemplate wanting to be a freelance. You want to own your own business. You want to be an actor. And then your parents come along who are level fours saying, no, you can't do that. You have to follow the family business. You have to be what I tell you to be. That's perspective abuse. When the fours come along and tell the ethical fives that they're not allowed to be an entrepreneur or a freelancer, that they have to be a doctor or an attorney because they have to think about the greater good of the family. There you go. That's level 4 thinking. That is exactly level 4 perspective thinking, when they prioritize law and order above the individual and the self. So once you have your ethical perspective, which is whatever resonates with you, pick that out. The second one is, how old were you when you were first abused? When were you first told you can't be who you are? And what was the consequence? Also, see if you can find your parents. You had your mom, you had your dad, or your mom, your dad, or you had caregivers, or you had your uncles, whoever raised you. Okay. Think about the top people who influenced you, whether they were siblings who abused you, whether they were teachers, coaches, anybody. These are usually 3 to 5 different people who were highly influential, usually in a negative way, in your life. And definitely caregivers, moms and dads. Where were they on this spectrum? Locate it. Now, keep in mind that when you think of these people, you are probably thinking about their subconscious mind, not their ethical perspective. You're thinking about their subconscious mind's perspective. That's not for you to figure out. It's just something to be mindful of, that when you think back to an incident, for instance, that moment with my mom and my brother, I can think of my mom and I can say things like, oh, she was talking from second perspective. That was absolutely second perspective. Now, my mom is actually a 5. Ethically, now I know this. My mom is an ethical 5, but her abuse kept her at tribal, kept her at number 2 perspective. And she was using that in that particular incident to abuse my brother with her religion. So when you think of it that way, keep in mind that if you were being abused by somebody, you most likely were being abused by that particular perspective. Now, I have another list underneath this video on my webpage, www.anashealinggarden.org. And when you find your coordinates, there's going to be a list of the 8 perspectives, but then there's going to be a list of what it looks like. For instance, if you were physically abused with violence or sexual assault, level 3. Absolutely, 100% level 3. Level 3s are the violent, physical abusive, sexually assaulting. That's level 3, 100%. If a person is a level 5, then they will, when they're lower functioning, they will resort back to the violence, the aggression, and the possibly sexual assault. Now, you can be a level 3 and not be violent and aggressive. It depends on your process. You could go into depression. You could go into avoidant behavior. You could become an addict. You could become sad. You could become quiet and shrink. And that's where ADD and ADHD come along. It depends on how you were abused. The only time you become aggressive is when this is the independent stage. I have to emphasize this. This is not the aggression stage, as Dr. Graves calls it. This is where that's incorrect, because not everybody's aggressive. Aggression is a consequence depending upon the kind of abuse and what their coping style is. So if you just look at number 3 is just independence. It's when you take the authority back for yourself. Now, a lot of people don't like it when you take authority back for yourself. So number 2s call that selfish. And number 4s call that selfish. And what you end up with, what you end up getting stuck with is your independence, and it's your fight for independence and your need to define your identity and your autonomy, but you have to fight for it now. And some people, when they don't get the independence they require at stage 3, then, depending upon what their coping style is, then they become violent, aggressive, dangerous, abusive, or they become sad and depressed, or they completely shut down and become dissociated. It depends on your coping style. Not level 3, it depends on your coping style. For those of us who are not stuck at level 3, it's because we were allowed at some point in our lives to explore your independence and define your identity and your autonomy. I just put my son through this for the last year, where he was isolated and alone because I recognized that he was very much needing some independence. because he never got that, because when he was 3, he was abused. So he was always denied his independence. And as a result, he became very violent for a very long time. So to end the violence, I had to give him his isolation for his independence. And he got it for a solid year where it was just him and himself. He went on walkabout. And in that time, he was able to define his identity and his autonomy. And once he did that, he was able to return back into society, return to people and go, I appreciate people now. And his violence is gone. It is absolutely dire that we all reach that point of independence. If you are somebody who struggles with anger, it's because you never were allowed to define your identity and your autonomy. So your violence is how you're coping. And that's just your coping style because you're a controller. And it went to that extreme because you never were taught how to handle the emotion, anger, and communication was taken away from you. Anger is a very good emotion, but without communication, it turns into violence. Communication stops the violence. When you become angry, you're supposed to choose your defense system, your assertiveness. You're supposed to communicate and then enforce it with communication and control. Instead, communication is taken away from us. Anger is what's presented instead. Well, anger is then there's no place for it to go. So it becomes violence and aggression and abuse. And now you get into more perspective abuse. So I have a whole thing on just level 3s and understanding anger and how anger requires communication. But we are communicated at an earlier age that it is not safe enough to talk. So we shut down our communication system, our defense system shuts down, and that leaves us with no other option. So when we get anger, for some people, level 3s, it becomes so much that they become angry, abusive, and aggressive because they don't know how to communicate. So this is like a whole rebalancing, reconnecting, and understanding how the system goes. So to determine what your subconscious mind functions at, the question you need to ask is, how old were you when you were first significantly abused? Try and find your first core abusive memory. If you can't remember it because you were so young, probably a level 2. Probably a level 2. If you can't remember it, assume it's a level 2. Maybe even a level 1. Maybe even a level 1. A level 1 is where you feel helpless, like you need help, like everyone needs to take care of you. That's level 1. And again, look at the graph, figure out which one best defines your fear, best defines your subconscious mind. And now you'll have the 2 numbers. So you can go, oh, I'm a 5 or a 6, but I've been abused by a 1 and a 2. So my subconscious mind is here. Now, what you're going to happen is this. With our high function and our low function, I'm an 8, so my low function is 6. Now, if I was still mentally ill, my subconscious mind would be a 2. So even though my high function is 8, my low function is 6, my subconscious mind would be 2. That means that I would be going back to the subconscious mind and pulling behavior from the second perspective. So there is no rules that follow the second combination. Just because you're a 5 doesn't mean you can't subconsciously be a 1. Just because you're a 6 does not mean you subconsciously can't be a 1 or a 2. But if you're a 6, your low function is going to be a 4. But you can regress even further with a subconscious mind that's not disciplined or healed. Now, you cannot get to level 7 perspective with a mental illness. You cannot. There is no way it's going to happen. By level 6, you have to confront your demons. You have to address your subconscious mind. You must be aligned to get past level 6. You must be at a 6-6 combination in order to get to level 7. Not going to happen. That door is going to be completely cut off from you. There is no way you can cross over into a 7 without your mental illness being taken care of. So that being said, talk about an incentive to want to get yourself mentally healed. That being said, if you're a 6 and your subconscious mind is stuck at 1 or 2 because of abuse, but you're desiring to be a 6, and maybe you've carved out your own business and your business is flourishing, and when you're home, you have an environment of 5. So your combination would be 6-5-2 or 6-5-1. You're going to be in a lot of pain. Your subconscious mind, who's at a 2, is going to do everything in its power to shut down your business, which is why you run into obstacles, because the subconscious mind is subconsciously trying to get you to conform to where it is safe to exist at levels 1, 2, 3, or 4. Once you get to 5, as I said, fives don't abuse. Fives is where it starts to split. A 5 with mental issues with a lower function of 3 will abuse, could abuse. A level 6 with a lower function of 4, you might see the end of that abuse. But by level 7, no more abuse. Level 7, you drop to level 5, but you retain the ethics of 5 and 7. You don't abuse. So once you get to level 7, abuse, violence, anger, aggression, sexual assault all stops. All stops. There's none of it. And again, it's because once you get to level 7, you've resolved your mental illness. So your subconscious mind at level 7 is aligned at a 777. And your only lower function is it drops down to a 5. But when it drops down to a 5, you're still maintaining a 7 environment and a 7 mentality and a 7 subconscious mind, even though you're at a I'm hangry, so I'm going to act like I'm 5. So you might be a little bit more selfish. I hate the word selfish. I'm not going to use it anymore. So you might be a little bit more self-absorbed. You might be less mindful if you're a 7 and you're low functioning. You might be judgmental. You might feel a little bit superior, like I'm better than you. That might come back when you're hangry. You might feel a little bit more condescending when you're hangry. And that's about it. That's about it. You might run into a little bit of perspective abuse if when you're down to level 5 with your low functioning, if you're a 777, but you'd keep it in check. You'd be really good with keeping it in check, because once you get to that combination of 777, you're mindful, and it becomes a habit. It becomes embedded into your subconscious mind, so that your subconscious mind is dumping positivity and mindfulness about the ethics, and how you are really ethically aware of how your behavior affects other people's. That's like in the forefront of your mind. So this should be enough information to get you where you need to go with your subconscious mind. Now, as far as averages go, and this is the other thing I really need to talk about with your subconscious mind, it takes the average. No, that's the third perspective. That's the third combination. So let's just keep it here. This is great for your subconscious mind. And then I will get into the third part of your combination, which is your environment. Now, your environment takes the average. And the environmental combination, that third number of your combination, changes and fluxes depending upon where you are and who you are with. So your first number is your ethical perspective. That does not change. It changes, but in general for your life, it's there. And then your second number, your combination, is the subconscious mind perspective. So you have enough information now to figure out your subconscious mind's perspective. And then once you do that, you're going to be able to see, oh, that's the problem. I want to be, and I am a 6 or a 5 or a 4, but I was abused, and my subconscious mind is stuck at 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll go over that more as to how to get out of that and what you need to do to get over that. And yeah, this is like we're tailing the end of the information that now is the start of triadic healing. So once I go over the third combination, you'll have your combination, and then how is all triadic healing and all the tactics and how to start conditioning your mind to basically grow your subconscious mind through all the different perspectives, so that you align and end your mental illness. Thank you so much. Take a look at my website, www.anashealinggarden.org, and yeah, you'll find everything you need there, my upcoming classes, everything. Thank you so much, and may the kindest of words always join you. May the kindest of words always find you.